I don't know if you guys can see me. Hi, everybody. Hold on one second. Let me move my screen so I can see what's going on. Hi, everyone. It's Valerie Haas. I'm the Learning and Development Lead here for Goodwill Columbus, and I welcome you back to our Facebook page. Today, I'm going to be chatting with you once again about preparing for an interview, but we're going to go a little deeper and focus a little more on the types of questions that you're asked and the method in which you should answer those questions, okay? So let me share my screen here. I want to go refer back to a slide that we have seen before. Share. And then let me make that bigger so that we can take a look at that. Hope everyone's doing well today. Now, I'm hoping, let's see. I'm hoping that everyone has seen the full version of this presentation. It's offered a few different times out on our Facebook page, so I'm sure that you can find a recording of it. I did it yesterday at 6 p.m., but I did it a couple times last week as well. So please go back and watch that all the way through. We spent some time talking about the types of questions asked, and let me go back to that for a second. Let's go back to that slide where we're talking specifically about the different types of questions that are asked in the interview. There are skill-based questions that are typically asked. Let me adjust my camera just a bit. There are skill-based questions, and those questions are specifically trying to figure out what your experience and your knowledge of the industry is, maybe some practical knowledge, how you utilize the knowledge that you've gained. Then there are behavioral questions and situational questions. Now, the behavioral questions are testing your aptitude, your problem-solving abilities, and your soft skills. And when we talk about soft skills, we're talking about how well do you communicate with others? How well do you work with others? And the way that we're able to tell your ability to work with others is basically, how do you communicate with them? And then lastly, are situational questions. These are going to be scenario-based questions that are presented to you, and based upon how you respond, they are looking to test your decision-making skills. So with that said, we suggest that when answering situational and or behavioral types of questions, you should use what's considered the CAR technique. And when we say the CAR technique, CAR is a acronym, and that spells out context, action, and result. Now, as I was looking out online, and I thought, let me do a little bit of research as to some examples of the CAR technique out there. One of the things that I came across was a different term for the C acronym, for the C as a part of the acronym. Instead of context, where we're talking about what was the situation, they phrased it as, what is the challenge? The C stands for challenge. What is the challenge that's being presented here? And then you follow that up with the action and then the result. Now, some have utilized in the past what's considered the STAR method. That too is perfect. The STAR method, the S stands for situation, T is for task, A is for action, and R is for result. So as you can see, they are pretty much the same. When you are sharing your context or the challenge of the situation, you are in turn telling people what the situation is, and that's where we start. What is the situation at hand? So a type of question that may be asked is something like, tell me about a time when you used your initiative to resolve a complex problem, something of that matter. Or tell me a time when you had to deal with a difficult customer. Tell me about a time when you were forced to deal with a difficult coworker, something of that nature. So when they ask you that question, you then in turn want to give them the situation or the challenge, the context in which we are discussing. What was the situation that occurred in particular? So you want to give those details. 2, you then want to follow it up with the action. What did you do to resolve the problem? How did you handle that? And then finally is the result. What was the result, the end result? And we're trying to focus on a positive result here, okay? What was the result after you took action in this situation? So for instance, you may be asked a question like, tell me about a time when you went above and beyond for a customer. Now, I like that question, but that question was always an easy question for me to answer in an interview, mainly because one of my first jobs was in hospitality, and most people know that when you work in the hospitality industry, it's all about making people happy, right? So it was always in my mindset that when it came to customers, no matter what job I was doing, no matter what role I was in, it was always about ensuring that the customer left satisfied. So I've always been able to answer that one pretty easily. But there was a time when I spent time working on cruise ships. And one time in particular, well, let me go back. As a employee on cruise ships, I worked as a trainer. So my customers were internal customers. It wasn't my job per se to work directly with our guests that came on board the ship. However, if you worked on the ship and you were walking around in a uniform, which every ship crew member was required to wear uniforms. If a customer sees you, a guest sees you, they don't know what your job is in particular. They just know you work on the ship and they have a problem, yes? But I remember a time in particular when a customer came up to me, not knowing that I was a trainer, and they were concerned about a birthday party that they were planning later that day, and they had purchased a gift and needed the gift wrapped. Now, unfortunately, on the ship, we didn't do gift wrapping. So that is the context. The context is the fact that the customer came to me, they needed a gift wrap for a party later that day, and we didn't have a gift wrapping place on board. That's the context. The action that I took was I told the customer, no problem, I have access to wrapping paper. I'm more than happy to ensure that this gift gets wrapped for you, and I will personally deliver it to your birthday party. I did those things, and the end result was that I arrived at the party with the gift wrapped that I personally wrapped myself, mind you. I arrived to the party, I handed over the gift, and the customer and the person the gift was purchased for were quite satisfied and happy. So here you heard the context, the action, and the result. Now I gave you a lot of detail, but someone who's interviewing me would already know based upon my resume that, oh, she worked on a cruise ship. Oh, she worked as a trainer on board the cruise ship. I gave you more information than what would have been required necessarily in that interview because they would already be aware of that. I make the point to share that with you because when you're in an interview, while you want that conversation to flow like an organic conversation, and in an organic conversation, there aren't typically time limits associated. You want to be mindful of time in the interview because that person will have potentially other meetings or other interviews following your time with them. So you want to be succinct. You want to give them the context or the challenge that was presented, the action that you took, and the final result. Let's look at another situation. I went out to what was the name of this? Interviewgold.com. You can always go out on the web and you can find a lot of really great resources available to you so that you're better prepared to answer some of these questions. I always say, because some of these questions are going to be typical, we've gone over some of them in the past where they're asking about difficult coworkers, other people, difficult clients. You'll want to share some of the things that you've done in the past. Utilize opportunities to take those questions that are asked typically and answer them out. You'll want to give all of that information and then try to break down the answers so that they are very succinct in the way that you answer them. I always say, write it down in complete sentences. A lot of times the way that we speak is the way that we write. If you are writing things out and they're not in complete sentences, you're probably not going to speak them in complete sentences. So that's why I always suggest that you do that. Take questions such as, tell me a time when you were given too much work, you were already overloaded, and then one of your teammates is asked to has called off, and now you have to step in and take on some of the their workload. How do you talk to your boss when your boss presents you with yet another task to do? So here you'll want to tell them what the situation was, how you went about communicating and prioritizing to ensure that your customer, in this case being your boss, was satisfied in the end. That is the context or the challenge, the action you took, and the result. Again, I'm not against you using the STAR method because they're very much similar. When we talk about the STAR method, again, we're talking about situation, task, action, and result. Those are very similar things. Here, let me go out. I have another screen I'd like to share. Let's see here. Let's see, we'll share the screen for, oh, I thought I had it pulled up. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. Oh, I must have closed it out. Hold on one second. I was hoping I had another screen that I could share with you guys. Here we go. I may not be able to share this because it's on the web, but this is how the STAR method is described. When starting this situation you were involved in, you'll want to use an example from your current or previous job, education, or personal experience, or any relevant event. Always choose the most appropriate and business-oriented example you have, and one that best fits the role for which you were being interviewed. So basically, whenever you're answering these questions, you'll want to make sure that you are applying those terms and give an example that's going to relate to the job that you're interviewing for. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to talk about the job that I had at McDonald's if the job that I'm interviewing for is the IT role, unless it's about how you communicate with your clients or your customers, how you are communicating with your boss. Those things are always going to make sense because they will apply no matter where you work. But you don't want to talk about flipping the burger if really what we're talking about here is flipping a switch and fixing a computer. It depends on how you relate the two. I'm not saying you can't relate the two, but you'll want to be clear about that. You'll want to make sure when talking about the action that you are giving, this is the section for that the interviewer is most interested in. So they really want to hear how did you go about making a decision or your decision-making skills in resolving this particular issue. And one thing that you'll always want to provide is a scenario in which the customer, your boss, your coworker, whoever it is that we're talking about, that they left satisfied with the action that you took, that everybody was better off at the end of that scenario. So there are all sorts of different resources. You can go out to Google, you can go out to interviewgold.com. They have really great scenario-based questions and answers, and they give you a method for answering those questions. Let's see, what else? I also went out to a couple of other sites. We like to suggest too that you go and, you'll want to talk to other recruiters. I always tell people, spend some time with people who work in the field itself. You can contact different recruiters and have your own little interview session. I know that sounds odd, but if I'm preparing to interview in a field that I've never worked in before, sometimes it makes sense to go out and talk to recruiters that work in that particular field. Ask them, what are they looking for? Now, I don't suggest calling the company that you're interested in working for, but maybe call some other companies. You can call out of state. You can email. You can make connections on LinkedIn. You can go out to LinkedIn and research some of these answers too. There are articles out there. A lot of recruiters will publish articles on their page too of ideas and things of that nature that you can use in the interview process. So you can make this a time to research by interviewing interviewers prior to your actual opportunity to interview yourself. So I hope that what I've shared was helpful. Again, you'll want to use the CAR technique or the STAR technique in answering those behavioral or situational questions. And tomorrow, we're going to talk a little more in depth about how to answer questions, other difficult questions, like when answering a question about the criminal background. If you have a criminal background and you are asked in an interview, what was the situation? We'll walk through that process using the 3 R's. Okay, we'll go more in depth. Again, my name is Valerie Hawes. I'm the Organizational Learning and Development Lead at Goodwill Columbus. Also, I want to thank my moderator that's in the chat, Mr. Victor Johnson, who is a career facilitator for Goodwill Columbus. I apologize, Victor, for not introducing you before we started, but I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'll be back with some more tips We have 2 other sessions for today, one at 2 p.m. No, I'm sorry. Yes, one at 2 p.m. and one at 6 p.m. We're going to go a little more in depth on the Indeed career search, some things that you can do there, as well as the Indeed career resume builder. So got so much going on around here. All right. So guys, if you have any questions and we weren't able to answer them in the chat, make sure that you send us a message, or maybe the questions come to you later on. You can shoot us a message in the chat or in our message box, or just email us at wfd@gwcols.com. That is WFD at basically the gwcols.com is the Goodwill Columbus email address for our workforce development department. And as soon as we get your questions, we will be sure to answer. All right. That's all I have. Until tomorrow, I'll see you then. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day. All right. Bye.